Beyond the reach of satellites, beyond the last flicker of cell service, nestled in the primeval heart of our wild places, something truly ancient keeps vigil. It's not a creature of tooth and claw, not some beast driven by instinct or hunger. This entity doesn't scream to announce its presence. It doesn't chase with the frenzy of a predator. Instead, it watches, patient, unseen, often unheard. And sometimes in a moment of chilling volition, it allows itself to be seen. These aren't the whispered tales spun around campfires, nor the quaint myths passed down through generations. These are raw, unvarnished accounts, encounters ripped from the very fabric of reality by individuals who are anything but susceptible to flights of fancy. Trained hikers whose lives depend on their acute awareness, scientists who dissect the world with logic and evidence, and survivalists whose instincts are honed to a razor's edge against the wilderness itself. These are people who, in the most remote, untamed corners of North America, came face to face with something that defies every known explanation. What you are about to witness, what you are about to hear, has not merely been reported. It has been corroborated, cross-referenced against multiple independent testimonies, and re-examined with a dispassionate, almost desperate attempt to find a rational explanation. Yet despite every effort, every logical deduction, no expert, no authority can truly explain what unfolded. The Appalachian Trail, a verdant serpent of over 2,000 miles, draws more than 3 million souls each year. Most return home bearing tales of breathtaking beauty, of personal triumph against physical challenge, and of the enduring resilience of the human spirit. But a chilling few, they don't come back the same. Something fundamental shifts within them, a quiet terror etched into their very being. In the crisp, fading light of October 2017, Brian Whitley, a 34-year-old solo backpacker from Asheville, North Carolina, embarked on what should have been a routine, albeit challenging endeavor. His goal, to complete a 30-mile section near the majestic Roan Highlands. Brian was not a novice. He was seasoned with years of backcountry experience. His gear was meticulously prepared, his route planned, his mind sharp. Yet from the very first steps into that particular stretch of wilderness, an inexplicable sense of dread settled upon him. Something felt profoundly wrong. He later described it as a dead silence. Not merely the absence of human noise, but the terrifying absence of natural sound. There were no chirping crickets, no buzzing flies. The usual chorus of birdsong, a constant companion on any trail, was utterly absent. Even the wind, when it stirred the ancient leaves above, felt muted, its whisper absorbed by an unseen force. It was as if sound itself was being vacuumed out of the air. His own footsteps, normally a satisfying crunch on the autumnal leaves, were swallowed by the deep, mossy trail, each step a muffled, unreal tread. This pervasive quiet wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating, a heavy blanket pressed against his ears and soul. On the second night, deep in the unsettling quiet, just past 3 a.m., Brian was wrenched from sleep. The sound that awoke him was distinct, yet terrifyingly subdued. Slow, crunching footsteps. They weren't heavy, not the clumsy thud of a bear or the light scamper of a deer. No, these were deliberate, measured. Something was moving outside his tent, undeniably bipedal, its pace unhurried, almost methodical. His heart hammered against his ribs. He called out, his voice a pathetic croak in the engulfing silence. "Hello, is anyone there?" There was no response. Only the continued methodical crunching closer now, just outside his flimsy nylon barrier. He forced himself to unzip the flap, his hand trembling. He pushed it open, peering into the inky blackness, and there was nothing, just the quiet. The same suffocating, unnatural quiet that had permeated the forest since he arrived. The footsteps had ceased the instant he moved. The absence of a discernible source, the abrupt cessation of the sound, was more terrifying than any direct threat. He zipped the tent, every nerve screaming, and lay awake until dawn, rigid with an unshakable sense of being observed. The next thing he truly remembers is waking up, not in his tent, not on the trail, but in a clearing he didn't recognize. It was alien, utterly devoid of familiar landmarks. His tent was gone, his meticulously packed gear gone. There was no discernible trail, no path leading him to safety. Just dense and different woods stretching in every direction under a pale, sunless sky that seemed permanently overcast, casting an eerie, uniform light. Time itself felt warped. Hours, perhaps days, had simply vanished. There was no hunger, no thirst, no physical discomfort, only an overwhelming primal fear and the chilling, undeniable sense that he was not alone. Then he began catching glimpses. Not clear, distinct forms, but tall, angular shapes, almost like living shadows between the trees. They were too still to be animals. They didn't move, didn't rustle, didn't seem to breathe. They simply waited, watched. He would avert his gaze, blink, and when he looked back, they would either be gone or subtly shifted closer, always just at the periphery of his vision, playing a terrifying game of hide and seek with his sanity. He tried to walk to find a way out, but every direction felt wrong, every path dissolving into indistinguishable trees. The silence was his only companion, and it felt alive, sentient, pressing in on him. 4 days later, Brian was found. He was 20 miles from his last known location, a distance he couldn't possibly have covered so quickly or silently. He bore no injuries, no scrapes, no signs of struggle. He had no supplies, no shoes on his feet. He was catatonic, his eyes wide and vacant, staring into nothingness. When paramedics finally managed to elicit a response, he whispered only one thing, his voice raspy, broken. "It waits in the quiet." Psychologists, baffled by his condition, eventually diagnosed it as a fugue state, a rare dissociative disorder, a mental break brought on by extreme stress. They offered clinical explanations, rationalizations for the inexplicable. But Brian, even after extensive therapy, swears it wasn't in his mind. He insists he didn't lose time, he was taken by it. The silence wasn't just an absence of noise, it was a presence, a living thing. And to this day, he still dreams of that terrifying, unchanging place where the sky never shifts from its pallid gray, and the silence feels less like a void and more like a terrifying living entity. Olympic National Park in Washington is a realm of giants, home to some of the oldest, most colossal temperate rainforests on Earth, where trees reach for the heavens and the ground beneath is a carpet of emerald moss. Yet, beneath this verdant grandeur, something stirs that is far older than any tree, far more ancient than the very concept of time. In the humid, sun-dappled summer of 2019, Rachel Mendez, a dedicated wildlife biologist, ventured deep into the heart of the Hoh rainforest. Her mission was scientific, precise, to study elk migration patterns. Her goal seemed simple enough: deploy an array of sophisticated audio sensors, gather invaluable data on their movements and vocalizations, and report her findings. The first few nights were uneventful, marked only by the gentle rhythm of the rainforest. The rain pattered softly on her tent. The distant calls of owls were a familiar comfort. But then, just after 2 a.m. on night 3, one of her meticulously placed audio recorders captured something inexplicable. It wasn't the sound of an elk. It was her own voice, playing back from the abyssal depths of the forest. It wasn't a direct, perfect playback. The mimicry was unnerving in its imperfection. The cadence was subtly off, the words slightly slurred, warped, as if her voice had been run through a filter of stagnant water. It was as if something unseen, something deeply alien, was attempting to replicate human speech, trying to get it just right, Brain. In one way, she rationalized it. A glitch, a strange atmospheric anomaly, a miscalibration of the sensitive equipment. She reset the recorder, dismissing the unsettling incident, but it happened again and again. Each time, her own voice, calling her own name, echoing back from the impenetrable darkness beyond the reach of her headlamp. "Rachel, Rachel." The repetitions grew more frequent, more insistent, each one a chilling mockery of her own sound. Then came the whispers. Low, dry, rustling phrases like desiccated leaves skittering across stone, spoken in a language she couldn't possibly identify. They weren't distinct words, but layered, overlapping sounds like multiple voices speaking simultaneously through old, crackling film, a cacophony of unintelligible yet undeniably present communication. On the 5th night, the auditory assaults began to manifest visually. She began to see shapes. Not animals, not trees. These were figures that didn't move, didn't shift their weight, didn't respond to the gentle breeze that stirred the surrounding foliage. They always appeared in pairs, twin monoliths of silent observation. They watched her from just beyond the flickering, unreliable edges of her firelight. They never approached. They never blinked. Their stillness was absolute, unnatural, a silent judgment from the ancient darkness. At precisely 3:03 a.m., a recording from a nearby sensor picked up a voice. Her voice. Clearly, distinctly, it said, "Come back, Rachel." But she knew with an icy certainty that pierced through her scientific training that she had never uttered those words. She was profoundly, terrifyingly alone in that vast echoing forest. The implication was horrifying. Something out there was not just mimicking her, but speaking for her, using her own vocal cords as a chilling instrument. That morning, disoriented and teetering on the edge of a breakdown, she checked her GPS data. What it revealed was impossible. During the night, she had traveled over 2 miles from her tent, a treacherous journey made barefoot over slick moss, gnarled roots, and through icy, fast-flowing streams. She had no memory whatsoever of leaving her camp, of navigating that perilous terrain in the dead of night. She fled the forest that same day, abandoning her research, her equipment, everything. Officials, upon hearing her frantic, disjointed account, cited stress-induced hallucinations, a common diagnosis for individuals exposed to extreme isolation and psychological pressure. But Rachel, even years later, remains unwavering. She insists with a chilling conviction, her eyes still haunted by the memory. The forest wasn't echoing me, it was trying to learn how to be me. The true horror, she understood, wasn't just being watched. It was being studied, being replicated, perhaps even being replaced. The Wind River Range in Wyoming is not merely remote. It is one of the most isolated, unforgiving regions in the continental U.S. It's a land of brutal grandeur, where the very elements conspire against human presence. Here, GPS signals routinely fail, leaving explorers utterly disconnected. The weather shifts with a terrifying caprice, from brilliant sunshine to whiteout blizzards within minutes. And search and rescue missions, they often end in silence, swallowed by the vast indifferent wilderness. In the summer of 2003, a seasoned, stoic figure, retired Army Ranger Tom Beckett, led a week-long survival training expedition. He was a man of immense experience, his calm demeanor and meticulous planning instilling confidence in his 5 participants. For nearly 6 days, everything proceeded smoothly. They navigated challenging terrain, practiced vital skills, and bonded amidst the rugged beauty of the mountains. Their meticulously planned camp on night 6 was set near a glacial ridge, a formidable natural boundary. As darkness deepened, so too did the temperature, plummeting to dangerous lows. The wind, a constant presence in the Wind Rivers, began to howl through the skeletal, dead trees like a monstrous, agonizing breath, a sound that gnawed at the edges of their resolve. Around 2:45 a.m., the camp was shattered by a frantic cry. One of the participants, a young woman named Erin, was found kneeling in the snow, shivering uncontrollably, her eyes wide with a primal terror, fixed rigidly on the dark, unforgiving ridgeline above them. She was unresponsive, lost in some horrifying vision. It wasn't until Tom, his ranger training kicking in, gently touched her shoulder that she stirred. Slowly, agonizingly, her voice barely a whisper against the wind's shriek, she uttered 3 chilling words: "It's watching us." When Tom and the other participants followed her petrified gaze, they saw something, a figure. It was undeniably human-shaped, but impossibly taller, leaner, its silhouette etched against the faint starlight. Its stillness was absolute, utterly devoid of any natural movement. It didn't flinch, didn't recoil when their powerful headlamps cut through the darkness and hit it directly. But the next time they dared to look, just seconds later, it was closer, not running, not walking, but simply closer, as if defying the very laws of space and time. A cold dread, a feeling Tom, despite his combat experience, had never known, settled deep in his gut. Tom, a man who had faced down death in countless forms, a combat veteran whose decisions were always calculated and swift, made the immediate call: move, camp. The impossible speed of the entity, its absolute stillness, screamed of something beyond their understanding. They packed in a desperate frenzy, abandoning their carefully constructed site for the brutal journey through the night. But for the next 2 days, the unspeakable horror followed them. They heard it walking at night, heavy, deliberate steps, each one echoing with an impossible weight. Trees ancient and unyielding creaked and groaned under a pressure that shouldn't have been possible, as if something immense was moving through the dense forest around them, unseen yet undeniably present. Then Miguel vanished. One of the participants, a quiet but capable man, he was simply gone. No sound, no struggle, no trace. They found no sign of a struggle, No broken branches, no disturbed earth, just his map, clutched tightly in his hand, found near a rocky outcropping where he had been scouting. And on that map, scrawled in frantic, repeated lines, was a single chilling word. A watcher. Just that one word, over and over, etched into the paper, as if by a mind unraveling in terror. Search efforts, when they finally arrived, turned up nothing. Miguel was simply absorbed by the vast, indifferent wilderness. Tom Beck had never returned to the Wind River Range. The experience had scarred him, broken something within his indomitable spirit. But in his journal, recovered years later among his personal effects, a final chilling entry offered his grim conclusion. We weren't meant to see it. We weren't meant to know it existed. But we did. And now, it knows us and knows us. Out there, beyond the last blazed trail, past the final marker of human endeavor, deep beneath the canopy where the very light of the sun struggles to reach, something is indeed watching us. It doesn't chase with predatory intent. It doesn't speak with human voice, but it remembers. It remembers every fleeting glimpse, every whispered word, every terrified breath. The wilderness, in its boundless and different majesty, hides more than just its incredible wildlife. Sometimes it conceals entities older than human memory itself, things that are not merely indifferent, but far, far less merciful than anything we can comprehend. They are the silent guardians, the ancient residents of a world that predates our own. These stories, chilling as they are just a fragment of what we've begun to uncover. If you've stepped into the deep woods and seen something, felt something, heard something that defied explanation, something that changed you, you can share it anonymously, your identity protected. But remember this crucial caveat: once you speak it aloud, once you give voice to the unspoken terror,